Welcome to Ink to Gold, a Pages of Possibilities podcast. I'm discussing Steve Black's article, How Journaling Builds Better Leadership Skills.
Yeah, and we are really getting into the weeds on this one today.
We are.
Yeah.
Because, okay, imagine you fire your most difficult client and you replace all your underperforming contractors, right?
Sounds like a dream scenario.
Right, and you even drop like $10,000 on a brand new state-of-the-art project management software.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But you do all of this, and yet 6 months later, your margins are still bleeding.
Yeah.
Your deadlines are slipping, and you are still working these brutal 80-hour weeks.
Because the bottleneck hasn't changed.
Exactly. What if the actual bottleneck in your business operations is, well, it's you?
Which is a tough pill to swallow.
It really is. So today, we are stripping away all that, inspirational fluff that usually surrounds the whole concept of leadership.
No, finding your inner lion today.
No. Definitely not. We're not unleashing your potential or any of that. If you are an entrepreneur building a startup or a solopreneur wearing literally every single hat,
Right.
or even a seasoned business owner, we are focusing entirely on the raw mechanics of running your business.
Because that's what actually matters.
Exactly. We're looking at practical, actionable methods to build the one asset that actually dictates your success, which is self-awareness.
And that stripping away of the fluff is completely necessary.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because when you actually look at the day-to-day reality of running a business, inspiration fades incredibly fast.
It burns off so quick.
Right. Motivation is completely unreliable. So what remains when the inspiration burns off, it's your baseline habits.
Mm.
It's your level of self-awareness and, your ability to make clear, rational decisions under really intense pressure.
Which is hard.
Very hard. And that is the entire foundation of Steve Black's methodology in this article.
All right.
Which, by the way, he developed over 40 years of hands-on entrepreneurial experience.
40 years. So he knows what he's talking about. And Steve attacks this massive misconception right out of the gate.
He really does.
He argues that leadership is absolutely not about having employees.
No, not at all.
Like, if you are measuring your leadership capacity by your head count, you are just fundamentally misunderstanding how a business functions.
Yeah, it requires this profound shift in perspective.
Right.
Because, we are so heavily conditioned by corporate culture, right? We picture a leader as someone standing at the head of this big mahogany boardroom table.
Delegating tasks to, like, a dozen direct reports.
Exactly. Positional authority is what we usually call leadership.
Yeah.
But Steve points out that early in his career, he ran a solo business for 3 years.
Yeah.
He had 0 employees, 0 direct reports.
Right.
Yet he was making these critical, high-stakes leadership decisions every single day.
So if we define leadership strictly by who is on the W-2 payroll,
We completely ignore the reality of what an entrepreneur actually does.
right? So if leadership isn't defined by having a team of employees, we need to completely redefine the playing fields here.
We do.
Where are you actually leading in your business right now? Even if you are entirely alone.
Well, Steve breaks this down into 3 distinct arenas.
Okay, let's hear them.
So the first arena is leading your clients.
Oh, wow. Which frankly seems like it might be the most difficult one.
It is.
Because it's entirely based on influence without authority.
It is incredibly demanding precisely for that reason. You cannot fire your client in the traditional sense.
Right, you can't just hand them a pink slip.
Exactly. And you certainly cannot mandate that they follow your advice.
Yeah.
But every successful, profitable client relationship requires you to take the lead.
You have to guide the project.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are the one setting the initial expectations. And honestly, more importantly, maintaining strict boundaries around scope creep and timelines.
Which is so hard to do.
It's very hard. Sometimes leadership in this arena means looking a client in the eye and delivering hard news they do not want to hear.
Like about their budget being blown.
Or their timeline being pushed back.
Yeah.
And crucially, you have to help them see what they actually need to solve their problem.
Which is usually completely different from what they came to you thinking they wanted.
Almost always.
So you aren't an order taker. You are a professional guide.
Right.
Because if you just take their orders, the project will likely fail and, well, they'll blame you anyway.
They absolutely will, every time.
So what's the second arena Steve identifies?
The second is leading vendors and contractors.
Okay, yeah.
And this carries its own unique psychological friction,
How so?
Well, you're working with outside providers, Freelancers, agencies, suppliers,
Right.
which means you have to communicate exactly what you need, provide constructive and sometimes really critical feedback on their work.
Which is awkward.
It is. And you have to enforce accountability when things fall short. But again, you are doing this without direct managerial authority.
You can't just mandate compliance the way, like, a middle manager at a massive corporation might.
Exactly. If you push a contractor too hard or communicate poorly, they will simply prioritize another client's work over yours.
Oh, true.
So it requires absolute clarity on your end and the willingness to address friction directly rather than passively hoping it just, improves on its own.
Which brings us to the third arena, which Steve argues is the absolute hardest part of the entire entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, without a doubt.
Leading yourself.
Yep.
Because when you are the owner, there is no manager checking to see if you actually logged on at 8 in the morning.
No one cares.
Right. There is no one tracking your key performance indicators but you. You have to manage your own time, your own wildly fluctuating energy levels.
And your decision-making fatigue.
Yes.
For solopreneurs, self-leadership is the entire ballgame. I mean, it means doing what needs to be done exactly when it needs to be done.
Even when your motivation is absolute zero.
Exactly. And nobody is watching to hold you accountable.
It's tough.
If you cannot lead yourself through the basic discipline of running a business, you will never be able to effectively lead a client through a complex project.
Or hold a contractor to a tight deadline.
Right.
It makes me think of the solopreneur as like an orchestra conductor who also has to sprint around the stage playing all the instruments.
Yeah, she's a great visual.
Right. You're up there on the podium, waving the baton, setting the tempo, looking at the big picture.
Yeah.
But then you have to quickly grab the violin to execute a client deliverable.
And then run over to bang the timpani to pay your quarterly taxes.
Exactly. The physical doing and the strategic leading are just constantly bleeding into one another.
They really are.
So how does someone in that position possibly separate the two when they're operating entirely alone?
Well, the doing and the leading can only be separated by an intentional pause for self-awareness.
Okay.
Because the skills required for all three of those arenas, managing clients, managing vendors, and managing yourself, they're identical.
Identical.
Identical. You need crystal clear communication, you need highly developed emotional regulation, and you need objective decision-making skills.
Okay, I see that.
But here's the issue. Traditional leadership programs almost exclusively focus on external structural skills.
Right, how to run a meeting.
Right. They teach you how to run an efficient quarterly review or how to format a performance improvement plan.
Yeah.
They completely miss the internal psychological foundation.
Which is the most important part.
It is. If you are playing all the instruments yourself, external management tricks won't save you. You need internal regulation.
So if external skills aren't enough and you are operating mostly on your own, we run into a massive feedback problem.
A huge one.
Where do you get the objective data necessary to know if your internal regulation is actually working?
Right.
Because you don't have a boss to give you an annual review.
Right.
This is where the journal stops being a Dear Diary exercise and transforms into a hardcore business school.
Because you have to understand that most business owners are operating in a complete, total vacuum. Think about the reality of your daily interactions. Your clients are probably not going to tell you what they really think of your anxious communication style.
No, of course not.
If they are unhappy or they feel you lack confidence, they won't critique you. They will just quietly take their business to your competitor next year.
Wow. Yeah, that's true.
And your vendors, your contractors, they are financially incentivized to flatter you.
To keep your accounts active.
Exactly. So they aren't giving you honest feedback either. Business partners will often swallow their frustrations just to avoid conflict and keep the peace.
So if you are solo, there is literally no one in the room to reflect your erratic behavior back to you.
No one. You are flying blind, relying entirely on your own biased perception of how well you are doing.
So the journal fills this critical gap.
Yes.
Think of it less like a diary and more like a flight data recorder, like the black box on an airplane.
I like that.
Recording the data doesn't necessarily stop the plane from crashing today, but analyzing that data ensures you never make the same fatal error twice.
Yeah.
So let's get highly practical here. If I'm staring at a blank page after a terrible, tense client call,
Yeah.
what exactly am I supposed to write?
Right.
Because just a diary entry about how angry I am isn't going to fix my bottom line.
No, it won't. And Steve lays out an exact method for this.
Okay, what's step one?
Step 1, process interactions, honestly.
Honestly.
Yes. And honestly means moving beyond your defensive ego.
That's tough.
It is. When a conversation with a client or contractor goes off the rails, you open the journal. But you do not just list the objective facts.
Okay.
And you certainly don't just write a rant about how unreasonable the other person was.
Which is so tempting.
Very tempting. Instead, you write down what you actually observed about your own behavior.
Like what?
Like, what exact words did you use? Instead of writing the client was being cheap, you write, I offered a price. The client paused for 4 seconds. I felt a spike of panic in my chest, and I immediately offered a 20% discount before they even spoke.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You have to ask, what were the underlying feelings driving your behavior? Were you feeling defensive about your expertise?
Or anxious about losing the cash flow.
Exactly. You have to document your internal state.
That transition from they were being cheap to I felt panic and undercut my own pricing is massive.
It changes everything.
And that leads directly to step 2, which is identifying triggers. You use the journal to document the specific recurring situations that cause you to have these disproportionate emotional reactions.
Because we all have these psychological tripwires.
Right.
Maybe it's a client questioning your methodology, or a contractor missing a minor deadline by 2 hours.
Yeah.
When you write about the situations that spike your blood pressure, you start to see the specific trigger. And there is a profound psychological mechanism at play here.
What's that?
Well, when a fear or a frustration is just bouncing around in your head, it operates in your amygdala.
The fight or flight center.
Right, the primitive part of your brain, you just react. But the physical act of translating that emotion into language and writing it out on paper?
It changes how you process it.
Yes, it forces your brain to route that information through the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical problem-solving center.
Oh, that's fascinating.
You are literally moving the problem from the emotional part of your brain to the rational part. Seeing the trigger on paper gives you a choice.
So if you map it in your journal, you can recognize it in real time next Tuesday and respond deliberately.
Rather than reacting automatically, yes.
And step 3 of this method is noticing your impact. You track how others respond to you over time to spot the behavioral patterns that you are entirely blind to.
Exactly.
Like, do people always seem to get defensive when you ask for a simple project update,
Or are your contractors constantly confused about what you actually need them to deliver?
resulting in endless revisions?
Exactly. Even without them ever giving you direct feedback, your journal will reveal your impact. Well, if 3 different contractors over the course of 6 months all completely misunderstand your project briefs, you cannot blame the contractors anymore.
Oh, right. The common denominator is you.
Your communication is the variable that is failing. The journal provides the undeniable data that forces you to see that pattern.
Okay, I have to pause and push back on behalf of the incredibly busy entrepreneur listening right now.
Sure, go for it.
If I am already overwhelmed, fighting daily fires, managing client expectations, doing the actual client work,
And trying to handle the marketing.
right, isn't sitting down to meticulously write out my feelings and analyze my amygdala response, it's just going to drain more of the precious time and energy I simply do not have.
It is the most common objection, and it makes logical sense on the surface.
Right.
But this is where Steve's 4 decades of experience provides a brutal reality check. As human beings, we massively, comically overestimate our own self-awareness.
We do. We really do.
We like to think we know exactly why we do things, but so much of our behavior operates entirely below our conscious awareness.
Yeah.
If you do not take the 10 minutes to sit down and do this written analysis, your blind spots will actively sabotage your business.
Because you'll keep making the same mistakes.
Exactly. You will lose a high-paying client because of a defensive communication tic you don't even know you possess.
Or you'll spend 10 hours over the weekend fixing a contractor's work.
Because your initial instructions on Monday were driven by your own anxiety and haste rather than clarity.
Right. So the journal prevents those massive cascading inefficiencies.
It feels like an extra chore in the moment, but it is actually a high-leverage mechanism that saves immense time, energy, and revenue over the course of a year.
You are investing 10 minutes on paper to save 10 hours of cleanup later.
Precisely.
Okay, so spotting a psychological trigger in a quiet room is great, but it doesn't help if you still freeze up on a live Zoom call with an angry client.
No, it doesn't.
So how do we take this ink on a page and turn it into real-time armor? This brings us to practical application, specifically in how you communicate and how you make structural choices.
Right, because leadership is, at its absolute core, largely about communication.
Yeah.
And Steve has a very specific, actionable protocol for this. It starts with pre-conversation journaling.
Pre-conversation.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Before you walk into a high-stakes meeting or before you dial into a difficult negotiation, you open the journal and write down 3 things.
There go there.
First, what is your actual objective desired outcome?
Okay.
Second, what specific objections are going to arise from the other party and exactly how will you handle them?
Anticipating the pushback.
Exactly. And third, crucially, what are you afraid of saying?
What are you afraid of saying? That is such a piercing question.
It really is.
It forces you to confront the elephant in the room before you even open the door to the meeting.
Right. It doesn't mean you are writing a rigid script for the conversation word for word.
No, but you are mentally walking the difficult path in advance, so you don't stumble and retreat when the pressure spikes in real time.
Exactly. And then there is the post-conversation journaling.
Right after the call.
Yes. While the adrenaline is still in your system and the memory is fresh, you document what went well, what fell completely flat, and what you said that seemed to land differently than you intended.
Doing this consistently creates an accelerated feedback loop.
It improves your communication skills faster than any expensive executive coaching seminar ever could.
Because you are analyzing your own real-world data.
Exactly.
You know, there is a phenomenal personal example Steve shares in the article that perfectly illustrates the tragedy of good intentions here.
Oh, the over-explaining one.
Yes. He discovered, solely through his journaling practice, that he had a deeply ingrained habit of over-explaining his reasoning whenever he anticipated a conflict with a client.
Right.
In his mind, he thought he was being thorough, transparent, and helpful.
Sure.
But when he tracked the outcomes of these conversations in his journal, he realized the devastating truth. His clients were reading all of this over-explaining as uncertainty.
It is a classic, incredibly costly blind spot. He was trying to avoid direct confrontation by burying the client in an avalanche of rationale and data.
Right.
But think about the psychology of trust. To a client paying for expertise, a leader who constantly over-explains sounds like someone who isn't actually sure of their own recommendations.
Because true expertise implies a quiet confidence.
Yes. That over-explaining pattern was entirely invisible to Steve in the moment. It was actively undermining his authority and costing him the trust of his clients.
And he only saw the dynamic because he wrote down enough post-conversation reflections to step back and spot the trend in the data.
Exactly.
And you can apply the same rigorous written honesty to the actual operations of your business with what Steve calls a decision-making audit.
Yes.
Before you make a significant choice, you slow down and ask highly uncomfortable questions in the journal.
Like, are you deciding based on actual measurable evidence, or are you deciding based on what you desperately want to be true?
Right. Are you making the choice that is best for the long-term health and scalability of the business? Or just the choice that is easiest to execute right now so you can go to sleep?
Those questions are the definition of taking your own inventory.
They really are.
I mean, routine operational choices, like what color the button on the website should be.
Sure, make those fast.
Right. But leadership decisions, the ones that impact your cash flow, your market positioning, your client trust, they demand an entirely different quality of thinking.
Yeah?
The journal forces you to slow down your brain's processing speed just enough to catch your own logical fallacies.
There is one question Steve includes in this audit that we really need to unpack.
Okay.
He asks, are you avoiding a hard conversation by making a structural decision instead?
Oh, yes.
What does this actually look like in the real world of small business? Because I suspect entrepreneurs do this constantly without ever realizing they are engaging in avoidance.
Oh, it is one of the most common pitfalls in entrepreneurship.
Give me an example.
Let's look at a vivid scenario. Let's say you have a freelance graphic designer. Let's call him Dave.
Okay, Dave.
Dave consistently turns in work that is slightly off-brand, and he is always 2 days late.
Not ideal.
No. The direct, necessary leadership action is getting on a video call, looking Dave in the eye, and telling him clearly that his performance is unacceptable and needs immediate correction.
Which is a highly uncomfortable, confrontational conversation.
Exactly. So instead of having that hard conversation, an entrepreneur might make a structural decision.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. They might decide to spend 3 entire weeks researching new project management software.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
They buy subscriptions, they watch hours of tutorials, they migrate all their company data.
And they build complex, color-coded, automated reminder workflows.
Yes. They convince themselves that if they just have a better structural system, Dave will miraculously start turning his work in on time.
Unbelievable.
They restructure their entire operational workflow, wasting dozens of hours and thousands of dollars entirely to avoid telling one person that their work isn't good enough.
Building an elaborate, expensive labyrinth just to avoid walking through one difficult door.
That is exactly what it is, and the journal is the only safe, quiet place to confront that uncomfortable truth about yourself.
Because you can be honest on the page in a way that is nearly impossible when you're trying to project confidence to your team.
Or when you are just spinning anxious thoughts in your head at 2 in the morning, the physical paper does not let you hide behind the excuse of a new software implementation.
Right.
If you sit down to audit the decision, the journal forces you to write down the stark reality. I am doing this because I am terrified of firing Dave.
Asking those hard questions and having those realizations is powerful. But how do you make sure you actually follow through on the answers you write down?
That's the real trick, isn't it?
It is. Because it is very easy to be brave in a private notebook, to write down that you need to fire Dave, and then completely freeze when you open your email the next morning.
Yeah.
How do we take this from private realization to public action?
Well, Steve addresses this by using the journal as an accountability mirror.
An accountability mirror.
Yes, he points out a very uncomfortable reality about human nature and leadership. We almost always hold others to a much more consistent, rigorous standard than we hold ourselves.
Oh, definitely.
We expect our contractors to deliver perfectly on time, but we give ourselves a total pass when we procrastinate on writing our quarterly strategic plan.
We let ourselves off the hook.
Constantly. The journal removes that double standard. It creates a highly visible, undeniable written record of your self-leadership over time.
So the actionable method here is to write down your specific leadership commitments.
Yes.
For example, you write in your journal on a Monday, I commit to having a direct conversation tomorrow with Dave about his unacceptable design work. Then when you sit down to review your journal entries 2 weeks later, you see the gap between your written intention and your actual action.
Because it has been 14 days and you still haven't sent the calendar invite to Dave.
The gap is right there, staring back at you in ink.
And Steve emphasizes a vital, non-negotiable mindset shift here.
Which is?
When you see that gap between intention and action, you cannot treat it as an opportunity for brutal self-flagellation.
Because if you beat yourself up, you will just stop journaling.
Exactly. You have to treat the gap strictly as information. It is objective data about your current capacity.
You know, it is exactly like checking the tape in professional sports.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. After a terrible Sunday football game, the quarterback goes into the film room on Monday morning, and the game film doesn't care about the quarterback's ego.
No.
It doesn't care about his excuses. It just objectively shows him that he missed the wide-open receiver on the left side of the field because his footwork was sloppy.
You cannot argue with the tape.
Exactly. But the truly great players do not watch the film to spiral into self-criticism and despair.
They watch the tape to correct their footwork for the next practice.
Exactly.
That is the perfect framework. You use the journal to close the gap between who you are and who you want to be, using radical honesty rather than rationalization.
Because when you do not use a journal, it is incredibly easy for your brain to rationalize your inaction.
Oh, we're so good at it.
We are. You tell yourself, oh, I didn't have the conversation with Dave because it was a busy week.
Or because the timing wasn't right.
Or I didn't want to ruin his weekend.
Right. But when your own handwriting from 2 weeks ago is staring back at you, documenting exactly what you promised yourself you would do, the rationalizations melt away.
It forces you to step up and execute.
Now, Steve openly admits this is a slow, methodical path to competence.
Yeah, it's not a quick fix.
No, this isn't a flashy weekend retreat where you walk out on Sunday night feeling pumped up and acting like a completely different person on Monday morning. But he argues that because it is slow, it is incredibly durable.
It is durable because over months and years, you are building a personalized, deeply specific library of how you handle difficult situations.
Exactly. You aren't trying to memorize someone else's leadership acronyms from a best-selling book.
Yeah.
You are generating genuine, field-tested self-knowledge.
Which is invaluable.
Steve notes that after years of maintaining this practice, when a sudden crisis hits his business, he finds that he handles it calmly and effectively.
Why?
Precisely because he has already written his way through similar emotional spikes in the past. The journal did the heavy lifting of preparation months ago. When the difficult moment arrived, his mind was already primed with the correct rational response.
That is the true return on investment.
It really is.
You are building a steadily growing capacity to lead well, backed by a written historical record of what actual success and failure looks like for your specific personality.
Couldn't have said it better.
Building that durable, long-term asset doesn't require you to write a novel today. It starts with a single, highly specific entry.
Just one.
Before we wrap up, think about this. What leadership conversation have you been avoiding, and what does avoiding it cost your business? Let that question sit with you as you open your notebook today. That's the practice. Try it this week and see what happens. Subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop, and visit pageofpossibilities.com for more journaling practices designed for entrepreneurs. Link to the full article is in the description.